More on this and to discuss the other talking points from around Europe. Andy Brassell joins us now. Andy, very good afternoon to you. Let's start then with that penalty claim. Well, Ukraine have felt hard done by, do you think?
A little. It was the main topic of discussion afterwards on both the Italy and Ukraine sides of the divide. I think there were certain Italian media wanted to convince themselves that it wasn't a penalty. I think Giuseppe Bergomi, the former Inter defender, put it really well on Sky Italia, where he said, look, if the boot was on the other foot, how would we have been looking at it? I think it's one of the clearest penalties you can see, really. The fact that the referee didn't go over to the monitor to have a look to it, which I believe he was invited to do, was something that really upset Ukraine. But, you know, they're working in unbelievable conditions at the moment, of course. The nation's at war. They played the game in Leverkusen. For them to still be in with a shout of it is something, through the playoffs, is something that's pretty good for them.
Yeah, they've still got a chance, of course, as you mentioned. Now, it used to be Portugal who constantly struggled to get over the line for major tournaments. Has that mantle now gone to Italy, and now they are there? Are they one of the favourites to defend their crown?
It looks that way, doesn't it, David? Because Portugal used to have this incredibly talented set of players and yet find ways to create extra drama in the qualifying campaign. Now, you look at them under Roberto Martinez at the moment, 10 wins out of 10. It couldn't have been more perfect. It was a great qualifying campaign for them and a great qualifying campaign for Martinez. But Italy, of course, having missed out on the last two World Cups, I think they probably had the jitters from the moment that they were drawn in the same qualifying group, not just as England, but as North Macedonia, who, remember, knocked them out in the playoffs for the last World Cup, for World Cup 22, the second straight World Cup they didn't qualify for. And then they played, and England fans, I'm sorry if this is a bit of a hangover from last night, after Luciano Spalletti had his first game in charge of Italy on a glue pot pitch in Skopje, a game in which Italy were leading and they lost that lead to go away with a 1-1 draw. And on the game on Friday night against North Macedonia in Rome, Italy went 3-0 up. Jorginho missed a penalty, his fourth successive penalty miss, if you include that one in the Euro 2020 final shootout against England. And then it got brought back to 3-2. Now, they scored 2 in the last 10 minutes, Italy, so 5-2 looks nice and comfy. But there were definitely a few nervous moments there, and there were certainly a few nervous moments in Leverkusen last night. And just look at the way they celebrated qualification in second place in the group. As far as them being one of the favourites for the competition, I really don't know about that. They feel quite a long way short at the moment. They're in a state of some sort of transition under Spalletti, although for him, the godsend is the fact that now when they meet for the March international break, they can just work on what they want to do in the finals rather than struggle to qualify for it through the playoffs.
Yeah, so they are there. And you mentioned North Macedonia. England finished their qualifying campaign with an underwhelming draw in North Macedonia last night. Gareth Southgate's aim will be to lead England to victory at the Euros, of course. But how are they viewed, Andy, by their European rivals across the continent? Are they favourites? Are they a team to be feared?
One of the absolute favourites, David. I think if you asked people in most European countries, they would say France and England are the teams to beat. I think that's pretty clear. You look at the depth of talent. You look at the fact that England under Gareth Southgate, OK, there are certain supporters who have their doubts over whether he has the tactical nous to get them through the final couple of games in a tournament. But look, Germany were in this position leading up till 2014 World Cup. Until Hansi Flick got it over the line, no one in Germany really believed that they could do it. And you need to win a final to prove you can win a final. It's really that simple. So I think you look at France and England, they have the greatest stability. Italy, betting in a new coach, they don't really have a centre forward of any sort of renown. You look at how lucky England are really to have Harry Kane. I know most England fans probably think that every day, but that's certainly the case if you look at some of the other European nations who are struggling for that A-plus centre forward. You look at Germany, who are in a real state of flux at the moment. Spain, OK, they finished top of that group, including Scotland, but there are still question marks over Luis de la Fuente, the coach, in certain areas, and the fact that one of their major players, Gavi, was injured in the last qualifying game against Georgia, which means that not only will he miss the rest of Barcelona's season, he's highly likely to miss the Euros, having done his ACL as well. So not just England's own qualities, but I think the rest of Europe is aware that some of the biggest names are not perhaps where they should be at the moment.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of those key individuals, Andy. As you were talking there, I was thinking that the guy who's been missing for England in those two kind of underwhelming performances that we've seen in the last few days, Jude Bellingham, who has been inspirational for Real Madrid. If England are going to win something, they've probably got to keep Kane fit and also particularly Bellingham.
Yeah, and I think the role in which Bellingham is being used by Real Madrid this season, the way they've come to rely on him so much so far is really interesting. But I wonder if goal-scoring Jude Bellingham that we've been really enjoying watching at Real Madrid this season is something that's not going to last in the medium to long term. Now, I've always thought in the long term, Bellingham won't end up playing that number 10 role, that really advanced role for Real Madrid anyway, because they're really doing it because they don't have a centre forward of note, going back to what we were talking about before. You know, they're making do with Joselu and occasionally Rodrigo, who you would imagine would end up playing more of a wide role, has been playing centre forward for them. If they go and get Kylian Mbappe next summer or whoever else, you would suspect that Jude Bellingham plays more of the role that he did for Dortmund, the sort of number 8-ish sort of role. The other question is, with Real Madrid having such a terrible injury list at the moment, including quite a few midfielders, maybe Bellingham will have to take up a different role in the short term as well. So that they were already without Aurelien Tchouameni of France for the rest of the year after he broke his foot. Now Eduardo Camavinga broke down in training for France. He's not expected to be seen again in the white of Real Madrid until 2024. Vinicius Junior is out. That's to add to the absences of Militao, to Kepa, to Courtois. If Bellingham is going to prop up Real Madrid, now is the time to do it, because it's a lot of work for them to stay in the title race, really, between now and Christmas with all those injury absences.
OK, let's focus on tonight's games then. England are there, Italy are there. We know that 7 more Euro 2024 qualifying matches tonight. The two significant ones, Andy, involve Wales and Croatia. Wales need to obviously beat Turkey. Also hope Croatia fail to beat Armenia. Does it feel like mission impossible for Rob Page's side tonight?
Am I allowed to say it feels like mission unlikely? I mean, I think you look at it at the start of the group, and it was always a long shot for Wales, particularly in the post-Gareth Bale era. I think they've done pretty well to stay in it so far. Now, I know certain people will look back and say, OK, well, you know, they allowed Armenia to take 4 points off them. Armenia are a decent side, I would say. And, you know, you look at how they've made it difficult for other sides. There have been some crazy results in the group, and I would include Wales among that. How they managed to take a point off Croatia and Split, I'm sure the Croatians are still trying to figure out. It just felt after that win over Croatia in Cardiff that Wales had the upper hand. But, you know, Armenia taking a point off them is by no means a big shock. They're an improving side with some really talented players, and they showed that in the first game in Cardiff, I think. What is the question as far as tonight goes? Firstly, how difficult will Turkey make it for them? Because Turkey have had 3 wins out of 3 under Vincenzo Montella since he became the coach. They're really good in Germany at the weekend, in an unbelievable atmosphere. So many Turkish people and people from Turkish families in Germany, of course. There's an incredible atmosphere in Berlin, getting behind the away side. And there's a lot of talent there, I think it's fair to say, and they've, of course, already qualified. The fact that they have already qualified maybe means they don't have to go hell for leather in Cardiff, which is something that could perhaps help Wales. I think the other question is, can Croatia trip themselves up? They should beat Armenia at home, of course. But having said that, we talked about Armenia and their ability and them perhaps building something for the future, even if they haven't qualified this time. Croatia have got a lot of players that are out of nick at the moment. Now, I think particularly you look at them defensively. Šutalo was a big signing coming across from Croatia to join Ajax. He's had a nightmarish start to the season. And though they got everything sewn up pretty quickly in the away game in Latvia at the weekend, I'm not sure they're completely trustworthy at the moment. We always look at that Croatian midfield and think, OK, they're always in with a chance. And, you know, World Cup semi-finalists last time, World Cup finalists a few years before. But they're lacking that centre forward, as so many of these good European sides are. And like I said, defensively, I feel they can be got at.
OK, let's move on to Germany then, and particularly Kai Havertz, because on Saturday, Germany played Havertz at left back for their international against Turkey. He scored. They lost the game 3-2. Do you reckon that's given Mikel Arteta something to think about?
It feels to me like Arsenal are quite well covered there. I mean, Julian Nagelsmann was arguing afterwards, well, this is the position in which Kai Havertz could become one of the stars of the Euros. But that really is a product of the situation that Germany find themselves in that they haven't really got any top of the line fullbacks. I mean, at left back in any normal situation, they would have loved to have Jonas Hector, who retired from international football and then from club football at a really young age at the end of last season, still had a lot in the tank, in my opinion. And so Havertz is subject to that rule that if you are left-footed, you will end up playing at left back at some point in your career. I guess not a lot of people suspected it would be him and for the national team. And at this point, it's been one of those strange things since Havertz has come to England. They've really struggled, both Chelsea and then Arsenal, to find the perfect spot for him. I don't think for a minute left back is it. Of course, he scored that goal, which was a sort of scrambled goal off a set-piece situation. And then he ended up giving away a penalty later in the game. So if Germany are going to persist with that, fine. I don't think it's the thing for Arsenal.
OK, now, you touched on it earlier. Barcelona's Gavi looks like he'll be out for the rest of the season. How big a blow is that for them and Spain?
Yeah, it's absolutely huge. He's been terrific for them, David, and is something that obviously has caused a lot of consternation, especially with those injuries to Real Madrid's players as well. It's something that they call the FIFA virus in Spain. The fact that in every international break there seems to be players that go down. It's something that could happen in any training session, in any match. It's really unfortunate. And in the case of Gavi, it really could have happened anywhere. He just landed badly after making an aerial challenge, landed on one leg, and it was really, really unfortunate. And there was such an indication of how big it is for Spain when Ferran Torres, formerly of Manchester City, and his Barcelona teammate, of course, scored later in that game against Georgia. He pulled out a Gavi shirt to show to the crowd. Now, I don't think I've ever seen that in a game before. I've seen, players thinking of injured teammates perhaps in the next game or whatever, but in the same game, I mean, they knew how serious it was straight away, and he's very, very difficult to replace.
Absolutely. Now, Norway missed out on qualification for the Euros, and Erling Haaland picked up an injury, albeit it doesn't sound too serious. Are we confident he'll play in the live game against Liverpool on Saturday?
It would be a massive surprise if he didn't, David. Clearly, Norway's games weren't such a big deal this time around because they're already eliminated from the Euros, even though, of course, they want to finish on a high in that group. But I think you look at Haaland, and a lot of people believe, that this will be a sense of real frustration for him. Funnily enough, I suppose like Roy Keane, being an elite player who's qualified for a less than elite nation. Now, the talk around Norway is quite interesting. So Lisa Klaveness, the head of the Norwegian FA, has come out and said, we're not going to fire Ståle Solbakken, and, we're not expected to qualify for the Euros. We want to qualify for future tournaments, but it's all about building. But I think you look at it from the outside, it's not just Erling Haaland. There are lots of other good players in that squad. You look at Julian Riasson, who's great at Hampden Park the other night and is consistently great for Borussia Dortmund. Martin Odegaard, of course. Fredrik Alsnes, who I don't expect to get a big move from Benfica in the relatively near future. You've got Bob developing at Manchester City. You've got a lot of good players in there. So whether Haaland is at a point where, I mean, he's such an ultra competitor, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he came out not only fit, but really wanting to take his frustrations out on Liverpool.
Yeah, we'll watch that one with interest. Now, away from the Euro qualifiers, Union Berlin have appointed Marie-Louise Etter as interim assistant coach. Can you just tell us a bit about her background and why you think they chose her?
Well, I think it was interesting to hear Dirk Zingler, the president of Union Berlin, saying, we've not chosen her to make a point. We have chosen her because she's the natural choice. So Urs Fischer, their coach of 5.5 years, went after a terrible run of defeats. Of course, they're qualified for the Champions League, but they're bottom of the Bundesliga at the moment. And Marco Grote, who is the head coach of the under-19s, he was promoted to look after the team for the moment, and Marie-Louise Etter is his assistant. Now, as Dirk Zingler says, it would have been weird if they didn't appoint her, really. She's extremely qualified. She was a great player. She's been coaching at Germany age group level for a long time now, and she's been with Union for a while. She's holder of a UEFA Pro license. So whereas this may be a step forward for women's influence in the men's game, it's not done so by design. It's done so because she is qualified for the job and she is the best possible person for the job in this situation. And that's what Union have been very clear about all the way along.
Andy, great stuff. Always good to talk with you. Thanks for joining us.